Naganohara Yoimiya, the girl who touched our hearts with her innocence, playfulness, and passion, and that drove these reactions from Genshin Impact's players.
Yoimiya looking at seeing the fireworks, the vision come to life. Oh, that was so special, you guys. I have a lot more thoughts and words. I just can't get them out.
Oh, that was adorable. That was very cute, dude. That was very cute.
What is happening? Why? What?
This is Games Philosophy, and in this video, we're going to be shining our light of awareness on all of the wonderful life lessons and wisdom from Carassius Aratus, Act 1, also known as Yoimiya's first story quest from Genshin Impact, to help us gain knowledge on the human experience and for us to find inspiration to cultivate the most abundant life that we all unconditionally deserve to live in this reality. The main teacher of lessons in this quest is none other than the queen of the summer festival herself, Yoimiya. While it's natural to think that the reactions we saw can only be true for this crafted and digitized persona of Yoimiya, there are the undeniable human reasons that these reactions come so naturally and pure of heart. When we're talking about personality, whether the entity in question is tangible or exists completely in thought, there's human, empathic aspects that lead many of us to enjoy particular personality traits. Or, put simply, Yoimiya is designed to be like a person with specific traits, and while she's not currently a real person, she has a person's qualities that we enjoy being around and unconditionally appreciate on a deep subconscious level based on our human experience. This begs the questions: who is Naganohara Yoimiya? And why do we find it so easy to unconditionally love her? What are these traits that make her so energetically attractive and abundant? Can someone like Yoimiya exist in real life? Could I be more like Yoimiya? Let's observe, philosophize, and find our answers. On the most macro-perceivable level, Yoimiya is an unstifled free spirit, her full name literally meaning Naganohara, eternally wild or natural source, and Yoimiya, eve of the summer festival. Here already lies our first learning in Naganohara. Every human's default state of existence is naturally unstifled and free-spirited. We are essentially all Naganohara at birth. When we are first born, we have no concept of the world and how humans function in it. Anxiety and stifling doesn't really exist when we're born. We haven't had any experiences to tell us to disown parts of ourselves yet. We come free-spirited. What then happens is we all have different upbringings with different levels of trauma and suppressed emotions. When you're a kid, you have a very limited perspective of the world, so traumatization occurs easily. Especially for those of us that were raised under guardians that didn't understand the effects of traumatization that left so many of us with severe and debilitating levels of trauma. I personally battled paralyzing anxiety and suicidal levels of depression for my whole life of 25 years until just this last year. I share this with you because I want to be another testament that it is possible to move past those debilitating levels of despair that some of us feel in our lives, and so can you. Back to Naganohara, we suppress parts of that eternal pure source we're born with as we become traumatized and disown parts of ourselves for our conception of survival in our environment. An example story I like to give is, imagine you're a child in a restaurant with your family for the first time. You are being carefree and don't know how to act or even know that you're expected to act according to any societal expectations yet. You're being very loud and wild, and the other restaurant patrons observe this as bothersome. So, your parents grab you and yell at you to sit down and be quiet. You're a child, and do understand that your survival depends on the love and support of your parents or the people who are looking after you. So you perceive this aggressive action towards you as them withdrawing love from you. And if they don't love you, they could abandon you, and if they abandon you, you don't know how to fend for yourself and you could die. So as a kid, you had now perceived loudness equals the possibility of death. This is traumatization. Until this trauma is properly addressed and healed, this carries with us into our next stages of life in our subconscious, out of our awareness but still running us as we get triggered. We disown loudness as acceptable action from our being, making us unwhole and stifled. And through an entire childhood's worth of similar events, we will have disowned many parts of us and anxiety disorders take hold. Now, Naganohara Yoimiya is the embodiment of the inner child or pure source before social conditioning caused us to disown and repress parts of it. She is that innocent child that we all long to connect with again and validate internally. She fully accepts herself and has healed whatever trauma and disowned parts she may have had, of which there is mild evidence.
If someone came up to me and started telling me to stop being so stupid, they don't exist, nah, 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 I'd give them the evil eyes and tell them to get the heck out of my face because it's just so annoying.
And not only does she live in an unstifled and authentic paradigm of internal existence, but she thrives in it, even amongst the perceivably oppressive political state of Inazuma in her external world. We connect with her so easily because her pure, authentic demeanor is a part we all know, value, and trust in ourselves. And seeing someone be that as a fully functioning adult, especially in an oppressive political environment, is inspiring, and it speaks to our pure, authentic source as well. This authenticity combined with her high social intelligence makes her the social magnet that we see in her story quest. And this is who Yoimiya is, and the broad reasoning for why she can make these connections so easily. This is true for any person who lives in their own purest form of authenticity. The interactions for any given person would be different, but the social magnetism and abundance comes to people's authenticity with ease. And in the end of this video, we'll learn how to reconnect with that true authenticity again. We answered the broadest cause for why Yoimiya has such unconditional love and abundance all around her, but what are the perceivable traits that reinforce all of this? Let's observe. In Part 1 and the beginning of Part 2, we accompany Yoimiya in a series of discussions and errands as she prepares for her family's widely renowned annual fireworks show. Now, I just want to take a second to comment on how well written Genshin Impact is in making every moment feel special and important. Even in these seemingly menial tasks, there's so much richness and majesty in every interaction. It's definitely no mystery why Genshin Impact has so much adoration from its fans. Anyway, back to Yoimiya's quest. She has a multitude of conversations and exchanges with people in her life, all giving strong evidence to our first trait of abundant life that we see in Yoimiya. That trait is giving. In every conversation, we see the fruits of Yoimiya's giving nature, and when we're talking about giving, we're not only talking in terms of material things and objects, but much more so in the intangible elements, the actions that connect with people's being. Yoimiya gives counsel, she does favors for people without expectation, she gives people her full attention and remembers things about them. All of this creates immense value for the other person, and the secret is that she does it without expectation of anything in return, so the returns naturally come in surplus. She already loves herself and accepts her unconditional worth. She doesn't rely on reciprocity for validation, so the nature of her giving is coming from a place of pure inspiration. She just genuinely wants to create value for people. What's the effect of this? Every person in her life is unquestioningly willing to help her and do things for her. She doesn't expect it, her intentions are completely pure, and this is why all these people are completely willing to do the same for her. Entire books have been written about this very principle. In fact, one of the highest rated books in the business world, entitled The Go-Giver, starts with this: giving, touching others' lives, expanding the circle of our concern to include others, being authentic, and being always open to receiving as well as giving. That's not just a children's fairy tale, it's a good description of the most amazing people I've ever encountered. That there's a beautiful quote to summarize the learning here. Every character's relationship with Yoimiya may be scripted in the game, but it perfectly reflects what would be in reality if one were to be as giving without expectation. Otherwise, the game's dialogue wouldn't be believable if it wasn't centered in real possibility from our experiences. The first trait for an abundant life: be present and give. In another scene, towards the end of Part 2 of her quest, lies our next learning. We and Yoimiya head to Amanoma Smithy to process some firework materials. We encounter a problem, however, where Hajime, the only disciple smith, is backordered with many weapon commissions. Let's observe Yoimiya's course of action.
I'm very sorry. Would you be able to wait for a while? I have quite a backlog of weapons orders right now.
No worry. Oh, wait, actually, yeah, that could be a problem. Some worries. How about this? Do you need a hand? As long as we can get through your orders, you can help me process my ore, right?
That will depend on my master.
Oh, you don't mind, do you, Mr. Amenoma? As you know, it's not long now until the Naganohara fireworks show starts. There's still a lot of fireworks left to make, if I don't finish them on time.
She continues to look for solutions and isn't afraid to voice her concern and ask for help for the things that are important to her. she unapologetically wears her heart on her sleeve. Or in this case, goldfish. The previous learning showcased Yoimiya's genuine respect and care for others, and this one showcases how she respects and cares for herself, with no ego attachment, also represented as kindness without people-pleasing. The trait I would like us to observe here is this: knowledge and respect of self. And while that sounds a little vague, I would further divide this idea into she knows and respects her boundaries and is vulnerable. In the rest of Part 2 and through most of Part 3, we see several examples of Yoimiya's knowledge and respect for herself. Now, Socrates said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." Yoimiya is grounded in herself. She is not desperate for people to like her. She knows the fireworks show is important to her and continues to look for solutions for the problem directly in front of her, even if it means the possibility of rejection from the people around her. Now, you and I as people are distanced from the situation, but think about this. What's scarier? Being rejected by a total stranger you'll probably never see again, or being rejected by someone you know really well and will see again a lot in the future? For most, the answer is almost always the latter. She, however, is not bothered. She knows her unconditional self-worth. She is not dependent on others' approval. Her upfrontness actually boosts her rapport with the people from whom she's asking for the exception from, and this is where the essence of vulnerability comes in. In Brené Brown's Braving the Wilderness, she reads, "True belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance." Brené also writes for her acronym BRAVING, "I can't imagine anything more important in the wilderness referring to trying to be authentic in the outside world, than self-trust." The letter N represents non-judgment. I can ask for what I need, and you can ask for what you need. We can talk about how we feel without judgment. From these observations, I would close with this. Knowledge of self allows you to respect yourself. When you respect yourself, you can acknowledge your needs. When you acknowledge your needs, you can set boundaries for yourself and communicate and be vulnerable about them. Now, for vulnerability. Vulnerability brings your self-respect, needs, and wants to the external where others can observe that fact. I personally recolor the term vulnerability to a showcase of self-acknowledgement and respect. When people see your showcase of self-respect, they recognize that you have resolve to meet your boundaries and needs, and that you're not concerned with the potential of their judgment. Because you show having no concern for their judgment, because you don't project space for their judgment, they don't judge, at least not subconsciously or unconsciously. Without room for judgment, your intentions are received without any discolored preconceptions, and, in this case, Yoimiya's authentic requests and projections are met with equally authentic answers. The second learning for an abundant life: know and respect yourself non-judgmentally. In the end of Part 3, the Yoimiya Fellowship tells Sakujiro that his boat to leave Inazuma again is ready. However, Sakujiro has second thoughts on leaving, feeling unfulfilled in what brought him back into the intense political state of Inazuma to begin with. After some debate, Yoimiya thinks to seek help from an elderly couple whose son is a high rank within the Tenryou Commission, the Tenryou Commission being the local law enforcement within Inazuma. And then the group heads off to have the conversation, after a few errands, one of which foreshadows the learning.
Being close to family is better than never getting to see them, even if it does mean putting up with some conflict.
During the conversation, the following happens.
Sakujiro. So he came back.
Huh? You know him?
He was our boys' best friend when they were young. They were inseparable. They grew up together, shared everything with each other, and went everywhere together.
Two best buddies in childhood. One grows up to join the Tenryou Commission, the other grows up to join the Tenryou Commission's most wanted list. Well, no worries. If that's the case, then never mind. We can find some other way to help Sakujiro. There's no need to make things difficult for you. This sounds like something for Sakujiro and Keisuke to resolve between themselves.
Yes. It'd be so nice if they could go back to the way things were.
I think after all these years, they ought to let go of their grudges.
Yoimiya does what's in her heart, regardless of what conflicts or resistance she may encounter, always keeping her mind on what she seeks to do not how or when it will happen. The learning I would observe in the last parts of this quest: be unattached to outcomes and trust. Yoimiya speaks her truth in the moment. While it does sometimes create conflict or tension, it also removes the potential of greater difficulty down the line and allows the heart and mind to operate freely in synchronicity, leading to a more fulfilling way of being. Observe this scene in part 4 of her quest.
Then why did you risk life and limb to get yourself back into Inazuma? And why were you so reluctant to leave after you got here? I'll tell you why. This is why. This is the chance you've been waiting for, to talk everything through.
I have nothing to say to him. He's a criminal. I work for the Tenryou Commission. There is never any room for discussion. Out of respect for the friendship we once had, I gave him a chance to fight for his freedom. But his skills with the sword are as disappointing now as they ever were.
What are you talking about? And just who do you think you're kidding? You left all your subordinates back there to guard the road, making sure no one else followed you here. Seems to me like you were hoping for a chance to talk. I can see it in your faces. You both have so much to say, and you're just gonna choose to keep it all inside?
Tuh. Don't flatter yourself. What would you know?
Yoimiya, leave it. It was just my wishful thinking.
No, I won't leave it! I will not stand by and watch when you haven't even done anything! Keisuke, you seem to like settling things with a duel, so let's do it your way. I challenge you to a duel. If I win, then you need to say everything that's in your heart. No more running from your feelings. And the same goes for you, Sakujiro. If I win, you will tell Keisuke exactly why you came back, no matter what the consequences are. You have to tell him everything. If you don't say anything now, you may never have another chance.
And if you lose?
Then I'll admit to collaborating with Sakujiro and accept the Tenryou Commission's punishment.
Yoimiya.
I accept. Let's settle this with a duel.
After this scene, all characters belabor the point, addressing that trusting whatever happens, if authentic, will be for the best. When you're operating authentically, not every interaction or situation will be a desirable outcome. In fact, authenticity can be quite uncomfortable. But so goes the saying, your worst day being authentic and true to yourself will always beat your best day being fake and suppressing yourself. This is to say that being unattached to outcomes is where authenticity can shine. If one is in a paradigm of worrying about all the potential discomfort of a future outcome, like Sakujiro and Keisuke before the duel, then they will feel extreme resistance to trusting and speaking their truth, and therefore being inauthentic. Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now says, "Are you worried? Do you have many what-if thoughts? You are identified with your mind, which is projecting itself into an imaginary future situation and creating fear. There is no way you can cope with such a situation because it doesn't exist. You can stop this health and life-corroding insanity by acknowledging the present moment." It was extremely belabored that Sakujiro and Keisuke were both stubborn about their fear of outcomes based on previous experiences. They were stifling themselves to avoid being triggered, which is creating a much bigger problem for them, such as going to jail and reluctantly sentencing someone to jail. Yoimiya was the antithesis to the stifled worrying paradigm and spoke her truth right then and there, and even put her own reputation and freedom in jeopardy to do it. That outcome didn't concern her. All she concerned herself with was her heart telling her that there's a chance for these two to resolve their conflict. So she acted accordingly, trusting her heart, herself, and that the outcome lived in authenticity is the one it should be. Now the third learning for an abundant life: be unattached to outcomes and trust. The final learning I would like to illuminate for this section of the video is short and sweet. This is a learning that I would say Genshin Impact as a whole is a teacher of. That learning is be present and enjoy the journey.
When you're exhausted, everything becomes an uphill struggle, even trying to have fun. You won't be able to enjoy yourself if you're too tired. An adventure friend of mine once told me that if you're too focused on reaching the end of the race, you'll miss a lot of opportunities and precious moments to be had along the way.
Yoimiya teaches that lesson perfectly. The fourth and final learning for an abundant life: be present and enjoy the journey. We answered our question to what are the traits that make Yoimiya such an abundant source? Now on to our next question, can someone like Yoimiya exist in real life? Before I answer that, let's talk about video games and personas. In general, characters in video games are meant to be dramatized in their consistency. They are designed to take the threshold of expression for human emotions to their limit and stay that way consistently. Human beings vary far more in their experiences and expression amplitude, and so are much more dynamic than most video game characters ever are. This is done for many reasons, namely, because certain characters may represent specific human emotions to try and evoke that specific emotion from us as we experience the game. Video games being pixels and audio files, a lot of characters need to be static and take their static personalities to the absolute extreme to have a chance at eliciting any emotional response from us real humans, who naturally get our fill from authentic human interaction, where the amplitudes of expression vary much more greatly. This is why there are tropes in most forms of animated media. Yoimiya is for the most part a static character, and while she does have a range of expression, it is pretty minimal because Hoyoverse really wants us to get the most out of her innocence and childlike demeanor for any hope of the pixels and audio files to evoke real feelings and reactions from us. In general, I think Hoyoverse has a great balance of keeping characters consistent and with a healthy range of expression. Now, back to the question, the answer is yes, but not as consistently and dramatically as her. We naturally have more range of experiences and influences in our life, so we can certainly have days or parts of days where we're as high-strung as Yoimiya, but we shouldn't actively try to be as consistent as she is. Now, in the learnings we talked about previously, I 100% believe that applying all of those will make life better in every way for an individual, but part of authenticity is embracing how you genuinely feel in every moment. Some days you might be as charismatic and talkative as Yoimiya, and other days you might just want to play Genshin Impact all day. The human experience is always changing, and we should seek to authentically be ourselves and be there for ourselves, not the video game character copycat persona that we think we want to be. To reiterate, the life lessons can be applied authentically to you and your life, and I hope they are, but becoming Yoimiya is not something we should actively seek. We should instead seek to authentically be ourselves. On to the final question, can I or you be more like Yoimiya? As we previously addressed, if you are seeking your own true power and authenticity, then the answer is absolutely yes. Yoimiya is a great example of a person who is authentic to themselves and lives a very healthy and abundant life.